Hi guys, how are you doing? This video is going to be about pretty much my favorite books that I read last year. I read a lot of good books last year, so I had a really hard time narrowing the books down that I read that really stuck with me, but I narrowed it down to 11 books. A lot of these books were books I've already talked about in previous videos, so hopefully this video won't be too long. These books aren't in any particular order. I'm just going on my checklist of the books I added to 2017 favorites. So first we have Devotions, The Selected Poems of Mary Oliver. This is a book I just talked about recently. I picked that because I just happen to like Mary Oliver and I really appreciated the selected poems. As I said in the video, I got a real taste of the different poetry collections that she wrote. I just really like her poetry. I like her imagery. So that's why I picked that one as one of my favorites. Then we have Dear Fahrenheit 451, Love and Heartbreaks in the Stacks by Annie Spence. I read this back in October. I really do like books about reading and books about books, and this was basically letters that the author had written to books. Some of them were love letters, some of them were, hey, I'm breaking up with you. And also throughout the book, she had suggestions for books to read when you're in a certain mood or a certain thing happens in your life. I really did enjoy it. My favorite thing is Monsters Volume 1. This was a book I read back in August. This was another book that I spoke about. This was a graphic novel. This was a tome of a graphic novel. I completely fell in love with the illustrations. So gorgeous, the colors, it was just beautiful. And I mentioned before, this is the kind of book that I would want to own, have for my own, and just be able to look through the pictures. This was a little girl who sees herself as a werewolf. Like, she doesn't see herself as human, but she's also like a detective. And it starts out with her interviewing, oh, now it's been so many months, but she was interviewing, I believe, someone who survived the Holocaust. I'm not sure anymore, but it's volume 1 and I can't wait till volume 2 comes out. Next, we have Reincarnation Blues that I read also in August. This was a book, once again, that I've talked about already. I did win an ARC of this from Goodreads, so I do own it, and I'm very happy about that. This is in a world where you have only a certain amount of reincarnations you can have to get it right, and this person's on their last couple of reincarnations, but the book goes in flashback and tells you about some of the reincarnations that this person has had and the stories of these lives that this person's lived. I don't know what it was. It just really just lingered for quite a while. That was by Michael Poore. I did not mention that. Fetch, How a Bad Dog Brought Me Home by Nicole Georges, and this was a graphic memoir. I just happened to grab it. I like graphic novels and graphic memoirs, number one, because you are more than likely going to get through it quickly. I like graphics and I like memoirs, so I picked this up. I just thought this was so sweet. She talked about how this bad dog that was constantly causing trouble got her through her life. That's it. It was just a good memoir, and I would always recommend it because it's a graphic memoir, and if you don't like it, it's not like you spent days and days of your time reading it, but I thoroughly enjoyed this. We have Rhett and Link's Book of Mythicality, A Field Guide to Curiosity, Creativity, and Tomfoolery by Rhett McLaughlin and Link Neal. This is a book I read in October. This is another book I already talked about. I am a big fan of Good Mythical Morning on YouTube and a fan of Rhett and Link. I really enjoyed it because it was like a coffee table book slash memoir slash blah, blah, blah. It was so much stuff, but I really enjoyed reading about their teenage years and growing up. Tons of pictures from their childhood. They've known each other, I believe, since first grade, and they're like 41 or 40 now. So I just really enjoyed it. And that's another book that I would like to own. We have This Is What a Librarian Looks Like, a celebration of libraries, communities, and access to information. I did speak about this as well. I read this back in July. If you love the library, if you volunteer at the library, if you're a librarian, I would definitely recommend this. This is a coffee table style book, but as I had said when I reviewed it, it's just a compilation of interviews and photos from librarians, volunteers, directors, children's librarians from different types of libraries. I thought this book was really important because people still think that libraries are like these perfectly quiet areas where you can hear a pin drop and you have some little old lady manning the desk. You have your quiet moments, but there's activities going on. There's children running around. There's children's activities. There are librarians with tattoos and different color hair and piercings. And I just really loved flipping through this and seeing the perspective of different people who work at the library. Reading with Patrick, I'm not going to go too much on this because I did make a video that completely covered this. It was just one of my favorites. It was a memoir about a woman who went to a very poor and kind of neglected area to try to help children graduate from high school or from elementary school. I apologize. I brain dump very quickly, but I really enjoyed it. Another book that I did mention again, which was one of my favorites, was Spoonbenders by Daryl Gregory. I really liked it because it's one of the few times where there's a bunch of characters. A narrative follows more than one character, but it doesn't confuse you or upset you. 5 different characters that were narrated, and some of it was first person, some of it was third person, but it was done right to where I was not annoyed every time I switched a character. I just thought just the plot was really good, and it just kept me guessing like what's going on. This was another book I spoke about, and I really enjoyed that one. And my last favorite book was Every Dog, a book of over 450 breeds by Nancy Hajeski, and I read that back in April. It was just my favorite because it was just a nice collection of different breeds and it, you know, temperament and blah 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 blah. It was just a book about dogs. So that's my favorite. I didn't want to talk about the books at length because I already talked about these in other videos, but those are the books that I kind of deemed my favorite. Like I said, I read, 76 books, and I had a lot of favorites, so I had a hard time narrowing down these books, but that's it for now. I hope you have a great week, and happy reading.